Trese Episode number 2. So this episode is a bit weaker than the previous one. Actually, it's a lot weaker than the previous one. I still enjoyed it, but not as much as episode number 1. This episode kind of feels like it was 3 stories mixed together, but only one of them actually felt like it went anywhere, while the other 2 kind of feel like they were just thrown in, if that makes any sense. I guess I can explain it later after I kind of go through the episode. So let's just jump right into it. So we start off in this strip club. It's called the Go-Go Strip. And we see one guy, and he's basically accompanied by his bodyguards and women, obviously. And he's just chilling out, having a good time. And we see these gold tattoos on the bodyguards. And it's going to play a part in a moment. And all of a sudden, this woman shows up with a bandana. And she slaughters everyone. She slaughters the bodyguards. She slaughters the strippers. And she just leaves our main guy alive for a while. And of course, he's begging for help. Like, he's begging, like, don't kill me. Like, what do you want? Do you want money? Like, I can give you money. And the woman says, like, I'm not looking for money. Like, what I want is power. And it's power that you can't give me. And then she slices him and kills him. And then later on, Captain Guerrero shows up along with Anton. This is Alexandra's father. And they're kind of investigating the crime scene. Kind of figure out what's going on. They realize that the 2 dudes with the skull tattoos had their chests cut open and their hearts ripped out. But only those 2. Everyone else, their hearts were intact. It was only these 2 that were mutilated. And Anton's bodyguards basically say, like, I recognize those tattoos. Like, they're military tattoos. These 2 men belong to the same unit. And there were other people also from the same unit that were brutally murdered and had their hearts ripped out. And so the 2 bodyguards morph into werewolves, and they go to track down the scent to see if they can find the killer. Meanwhile, Anton rips off one of their eyeballs because he's trying to see, like, okay, who is the person who did this. When Alexandra, as a young teen, shows up and she asks her father if she can do the ritual, and she does. And they make us basically see the image of the woman who slaughtered everyone. So then we cut to Anton and Alexandra visiting this general's house, and it turns out that the general was the one that was leading this unit, and he basically says that, like, his wife and kids are missing. People are probably going to suspect that they ran away from him, but he knows that they're dead. Like, he has a feeling that they've been kidnapped and they're gone. So then Alexandra shows the general the handkerchief. Like, do you recognize her? And then he tells the story of his connection with this woman. And basically, I think she was like a rebel fighter. This is very briefly brought up, but I think she was a rebel fighter, and his men, like, slaughtered her men. And they did, like, some kind of death ritual to get revenge. Basically, like, they held her captive, and I don't know what they did to her, and I don't really want to know. But it was nothing good. And basically, she, like, did this death ritual that, I'm going to get revenge on you and your men. And that's basically what's happening. And so Anton is like, well, if this is the case, like, she's going to go after you next. We got to, like, protect you. Like, we got to help you stay alive. And he's like, no, like, everybody dies, and, if she's coming to kill me, then just let her come. And then Anton and Alexandra leave, and that's the end of that. So that whole flashback is done with, and we never come back to it again for the rest of this episode. So that's why, this first part, it just really felt like shoehorned in. It doesn't contribute anything to this episode. There's no, like, later on, Alexandra has a investigation and there's hearts missing, or there's someone with a skull tattoo or anything like that. There's nothing. This was just shoehorned in here, maybe to fill up time. But this whole episode, maybe it'll play out later on in another episode, but I haven't watched any other episodes so far. I've only watched the first 2 at the time of this recording. So yeah, this was just shoehorned in. It makes no sense to have this in there. You don't learn anything new. It's not like Alexandra learns some new spell or anything like that. Like, we've seen her do this divination. I can't say the word for life. We've seen her do this spell to find out, the last person that these people saw in the first episode with the Aswan. I have no idea why this was in here. We didn't learn anything new. We didn't learn anything. There's no foreshadowing. There's nothing. It's just in there. So I was like, all right, this was kind of pointless. I think it's just maybe you're trying to build up some time or whatever. I don't know. So then we cut to the present day where Alexandra and her two bodyguards are summoned by Captain Guerrero. And basically there's this drag race. There's a street race going on. And Alexandra is confused at first because she's like, what the hell does street racing have to do with me? Like, I do like supernatural cases. I don't deal with people being killed in street racing. But Guerrero's like, well, like, this is within the last month, like, all the winners of the last 3 drag races have disappeared. They've just, out of nowhere, they just poof, vanish as if by magic. So maybe that's where you can come in. So Alexandra's investigating the car when she looks on the roof of the car and she noticed, like, hoof prints on the roof. She's like, all right, maybe there is something more to this than just a regular street race. She also finds a stick of lipstick in the car, and she basically asks this guy named Marco. Marco is Captain Guerrero's nephew, and he was a victim of the car crash. And she's like, does this lipstick mean anything to you? And Marco explains that the victim had a girlfriend who has gone missing. But the girlfriend would never like abandon, my friend. They love each other too much, so something's not right here. She's probably gone kidnapped or something. Meanwhile, her two bodyguards take a fancy to these 2 twins, and the twins kind of take a fancy to them, and so they're all kind of hugging each other and being lovey-dovey when they arrive up to Alexandra. And Alexandra basically takes one sniff of them, and she notices something coming off them. She's like, you guys are from the Wind Tribe, aren't you? Like, I'm sensing like a wind presence. And the girls are like, yep, we're from the Wind Tribe. So Alexandra's like, well, can you give me like an explanation about anything that's going on? Like, what did you guys see? Because it turns out they're witnesses. And the girls play kind of coy, but they answer. They basically say that it was this tall, handsome, long-haired man who had a lot of horsepower, if you know what I mean. And that's like when Alexandra's like, all right, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's when Alexandra shows up at this building. At first, the secretary won't let her in. In fact, she threatens to call the police. And all of a sudden, she gets a phone call from her boss, Senor Armanaz. I'm probably butchered that name. I might apologize. But yeah, he basically says, let Alexandra up, but only her. And so Alexandra goes up. Turns out that Senor Arm is a demon himself. He is some kind of horse demon, or like a goat demon. He kind of looks like a mix between like a goat and a horse. But yeah, basically Alexandra tells him, like, we believe that someone from your tribe has taken a young woman as a trophy. The young woman being the victim from the car crash's girlfriend, and I want her returned. And at first, Senor Arm is like pissed off. He's like, how dare you like accuse someone from my tribe of doing this? But Alexandra is, basically saying, like, you take care of your tribe and your people. I have to take care of my tribe, which are the humans. So I'm not doing this to piss you off or anything, but I need to find the girl. And so the Senor Arm is like, all right, but at the same time, my son has gone missing too. He's been missing for weeks. I want him returned. And Alexandra promises, once I find the missing girl, I will find your son. And so she leaves. And then immediately afterwards, we cut to her arriving at another crime scene, because she gets another call from Captain Guerrero. And this one is an electrician who has been electrocuted. And the weird thing is that this is like the 4th victim in the past 4 months that has died in the same exact area, the same village. And this is the part where we get the 3rd plot line. So the first plot point was the flashback with the dad, and that one is done. Now that was just a really brief, it was like 4 minutes or whatever, and we're done with that story. The second one is the street racing, which is still ongoing. And the third one is the one with the electricians being killed. So this is where the third plot point gets introduced. So Alexandra basically is told that, yeah, this is the 4th victim in the past 4 months that have died in the same village. So then she steps away for a bit. She does a little chant, calls in our goblin friend Nuno. He pops up, and basically she asks, hey, like, what's going on? And he tells her that the villagers in this area have been praying to a certain entity. They've been praying to this creature that might be involved in these killings. You might want to use magic on the victim and see what you can find. So Alexandra goes to the victim. She does a little bit of magic when all of a sudden this bolt of lightning symbol appears in the back of the victim's neck. And then she asks Captain Guerrero, like, has any of the other victims had this marking? And he's not sure, but she's like, I don't think it will be necessary for you to do an autopsy, to call the morgue to see if the rest of them do, because I think I know what's going on. So then we see her into this building where we have this man named Lektro. Yeah, I'm guessing you can figure out where this is going. So we have victims killed by electricity, and now we have this guy named Lektro. Electricity, yeah, I'm sure you guys can figure that one out. So it turns out that Lektro is this entity, and that basically the villagers were chanting to him and his people. Alexandra basically confronts him and says, I believe your son is the one responsible for these deaths. I think these deaths are connected to human sacrifice. And Lektro gets pissed off, says like, how dare you like accuse my son, blah, blah, blah. And Alexandra kind of puts him in his place like, hey, like, you better stop your son before I stop him. And if I stop him, I'm going to stop him for good. And then she walks out. And then that's where we finish up our street racing plotline, is with this upcoming scene. So Alexandra shows up to a street race, and we see her talking with the twins, and she's like, are you sure that this guy is going to show up? When the guy shows up, so this is Senior Arm's son, and Alexandra challenges him to a race, and he accepts. And so we basically get a street racing scene where we just see them racing through the city. This part is kind of weird because it's explained that this is a drag race, but drag races are, as far as I know, they're just straight races from one end to the other in a straight line. But this, we see them driving around the city. So this is more of a street race than a drag race. It's also kind of interesting that there's nobody out on the streets. Like, there's no people on the sidewalks, no other cars. It's just driving through an empty city. But okay, whatever. I mean, for the sake of this, fine. So they're pretty much neck to neck, with Alexandra kind of getting a little bit of the lead. When all of a sudden her opponent transforms into his true form, the horse, goats, werewolf kind of looking creature. And he starts speeding way past her. And that's basically how he's been winning all his races. He's been cheating. He's been transforming into his true form and outrunning all these cars. But it turns out that Alexandra knows what he was about to do, and she has a little plan of her own. So all of a sudden she calls upon the two twins, and they show up, and they're both holding onto her car. She's like, all right, kick it. So the two twins use their wind power to basically shoot Alexandra and her car past her opponent and into first place, where she wins. So basically, since her opponent's using magic, Alexandra decides to use magic of her own to win. And of course, her opponent gets pissed off. He's like, you cheated. And Alexandra's like, hey, you use magic, so I just use magic of my own. Now I want my trophy. I want the girl. And at first he refuses to hand her over, when Alexandra basically says, like, on the honor of your father and your tribe people, you have to live up to your end of the deal. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go to your dad about this. And so he gets pissed off, but he brings the girl. And so the girl is saved. She wakes up and she asks for her boyfriend. And Alexandra informs her that your boyfriend is in the hospital, but he's going to make a recovery. So that's the end of that plot line. The street racing is done. So now we're going to continue with the dead electrician's plot point. So Alexandra is leaving Lektro's building. It turns out that he's not in there. And all of a sudden, before they can get into their car explodes due to a lightning bolt. So then the cause of the explosion turns out to be Lektro's son. Lektro's son shoots electricity at Alexandra's bodyguards, blows off their arms. They're able to grow it back. Shoots electricity at Alexandra, but she's able to put up a magical shield to kind of protect her. And then he starts shedding off his human form, and it shows his true form, which is like an electrical skeleton, basically. It looks kind of cool. And he starts stomping towards Alexandra, and he's confronting her, and he's like, I'm gonna kill you. Like you went to my dad, and you're not gonna threaten me and my people. You're gonna die. But before he can do anything, Nuno's mud golem shows up and grabs him, and he starts trying to break free when Alexandra throws her dagger into the mud golem, and it goes into his back, and like the point, and it gets stuck in his torso, but the point of it is sticking out. And so she tells the golem, like, hug the guy. So the golem hugs the guy, which causes him to press down into her dagger, and it kills him. And we think, all right, well, that's the end of that plot point. So then we cut to Alexandra, her bodyguards, and I guess one of her employees at the Diabolic. They're chilling out at Alexandra's home, and we see the two wind girls come down, and it turns out that Alexandra, jokes with them, like, so what did you think of your trophy? And the girls are like, we liked it. And the trophy was basically that they got to sleep with the bodyguards. And the bodyguards had no idea that they were the prize. When all of a sudden, the roof of the building explodes, and Lektro shows up, and he's pissed off. Like, he's like, how dare you kill my son? There's an impending storm coming. You better prepare. And then that's how the episode ends. Overall, I felt like the electric story, I guess, sets up for future episodes. But I feel like it could have been its own thing. I feel like the intro in the beginning with the dad should have not even been in this episode. So yeah, I didn't care about having the flashback in this. I feel like it could have been saved for another episode. Maybe an episode that deals with someone stealing people's hearts, or, a military, or some kind of death ritual, or whatever. Like, just something that fits the theme. But otherwise, it just feels like it's just kind of thrown in there. Like, we're just like, all right, here's a flashback of Alexandra that has nothing whatsoever to do with the rest of this episode. At least the flashbacks in the first episode made sense for that episode, because it introduced, like, death isn't always the end. Her summoning the fire demon. It deals with the Aswan. Everything made sense for that episode. For here, the flashbacks make no sense to anything else. There's no theme that fits. In fact, there's no theme in this that fits at all, except other than maybe the electric story has to deal with the guy and his son, and the son, like, doing things against his wishes. Other than that, there's really, it feels like it's just 3 different subplots. Well, let's just say 2, because we won't count the flashback as a subplot. It feels like there's 2 subplots just kind of thrown in together, and they don't really have anything to do with each other. I feel like this whole episode could have just been with the streetcar racing. And instead of having Alexandra basically get all her answers so quickly, you could have stretched it out into the whole episode, where we get more of her investigating and trying to gather clues and piecing things together. And then she figures out, okay, I got to beat this guy in the race. Maybe we can get like a cool street racing scene. Like, I'm thinking something straight out of Devil May Cry, the anime. Because in fact, in Devil May Cry, the anime, there is I think it's actually episode 2 as well. There's the street racing episode. Only instead of with cars, it's motorcycle racing. But it's still like illegal street racing. And Dante has to basically join the street racing to kind of, figure out these clues and complete his mission. So you could have done something like that. But instead, it feels like we're just kind of jumping between different things. Like, we go from the flashback to the street racing to the electricity to the street racing to back to the electricity. And it's just like, all right, whatever. Like, it feels like they basically took multiple issues from the comics, and they're just like, all right, let's just throw this all together, and we'll get one episode. So I would have just made this whole episode the street racing. That's what I would have done. I would have stretched it out by, well, I hate using the word stretched out because it feels like you're making things like filler when you don't need to. But I would have had Alexandra just not be able to get everything and solve everything so quickly. Like, as soon as she gets like one hint of a clue, she's like, oh, I know what to do. I would have had her, which I guess, she's a great detective, blah, blah, blah. But I would have made things more detective-y, if that's the word. I would have had her basically investigate more, gather more clues, go to Nuno and ask him, some questions or whatever. I would have had her question. There we go. I would have had her question more people. Maybe question some of the witnesses. Maybe she has to earn her place into the street racing. like she can't just challenge the winner. She has to climb up the ranks or something. I don't know. I would have just done something more and just had the whole episode revolve around the street racing rather than this jumbled mess of multiple plot lines thrown together. Other than that, the animation is good still. The voice acting, for the most part, is good. There are still some characters like Anton, Alexandra's dad. He just sounds like a villain. Like, I would have picked someone else for the voice acting. Maybe just, like, redesign him a little bit. He looks evil. Like, he looks like the stereotypical bad guy. If I didn't know that he was our main character's dad, and that's, all the stuff we see of him is flashbacks, and in the present he's talked about fondly, then I would have suspected that he was like a traitor of some kind. As for Alexandra, I still stand by what I say, and I think that the voice actress, I'm for anyone who's wondering, I'm watching the English dub. I'm not listening to the Filipino dub. I'm listening to the English dub, and the English dub is fine, and the voice actress for Alexandra is fine. She nails the cold, stoic, the detached lines perfectly. But the problem is that all her lines sound like that. So the character sounds kind of stilted because no matter what the situation is, Alexandra sounds exactly the same. So for example, when the roof of a house blows up, she doesn't sound shocked. Like she still sounds like cold and stoic. When she's basically kind of smugly calling out Senior Arm's son on his cheating, like, when he accuses her of cheating and she's like, well, you use magic first, so I just thought I could use magic. Like, there's like a little bit of she comes across like, maybe she's being a little bit smug or a little bit like, like playful and like, I just beat you at your own game, but her tone is still the same. It's still cold, detached, stoic. There is a scene where she playfully asked the twins, like, how did you like your prize? Like, how did you like sleeping with my bodyguards? And even when she says that, her voice sounds the same. It's still cold, detached, and stoic. Like, there's no inflection whatsoever in her voice. Her voice always sounds the same regardless of the situation, regardless of any kind of emotion. The only reason I am getting these emotions is based off of her facial expressions. Like, when she's talking to the twins, she kind of has a bit of a smile. It's like a Mona Lisa smile. So I'm like, okay, she's being humorous. But her voice doesn't sound like it. So again, I don't know if that's just the direction, because I've heard that the Filipino dub, the voice actress also was accused of being very stilted and stoic. So I don't know if that's just like, hey, that's what the director wants. That's how her character is going to be, regardless of the situation she's in. But it kind of bothers me a bit. Like, I'm not saying she has to be like completely change her tone, but just a little bit. Like, if she's happy, I want to see just a little hints of happiness in her tone. It doesn't have to be like joyful or anything like that, but just like a hint of it in her voice. When she's scared or surprised, I want to see a hint of that. When she's shocked or angry, I want to see a hint of that. Or I want to hear a hint of that in her voice. I don't. Regardless of what the situation is, she sounds the same, and it bugs me just a little bit. Again, I don't know if that's supposed to be how she is. Like, regardless of what situation she's in, she's always going to be cold, stoic, detached. Like, that's just her character. Then fine. If that's the case, then the voice actress nailed this role perfectly. If that's not the case, if she's supposed to be, she's a human, you would think she would show some humane qualities, like in her voice, like just a little change in the pitch or just something, depending on the situation. But no, she's exactly the same. So yeah, and then I've already brought up the writing. The writing itself is fine. It's just the structure for this episode I didn't like it. I didn't like the constant, like the multiple subplots and flashback. Well, not multiple flashbacks. I didn't like the fact that we had like 3 different stories shoved into here. Like, it almost feels like an anthology, or it's just like, all right, we got the flashback with the dad, we got the street racing, then we got the electric story. It's just pick one and have that be your whole episode. For the flashback with the dad, like I said, have the flashback with the dad, and then have her be on a case that's similar to that. It's kind of cliche, but it's cliche for a reason. You have the flashback, and then you have her trying to solve a recent case in the present day that deals with someone stealing hearts. And then throughout the episode, we have her having flashbacks to when she was doing the same thing with her dad when she was younger. But I would have done something like that. If you're going to do street racing, then do what I said earlier. Have the whole episode be about the street racing. Have her have to find more clues, gather evidence, and just not have everything fall into her lap so easily. Have her maybe have to work her way up to challenge the son. If you're going to do the electric story, then okay, have that be the entire episode. Or if you want to mix that electric story, then have another story that's somewhat similar or whatever, or that cross each other. Like pull Seinfeld, where in Seinfeld, each character had their own subplot, and yet at certain points in the episode, those subplots were merged. So what happens with Jerry will affect something down the line that happens to Elaine, which will affect something that happens to George or Kramer or whatever. This doesn't do that. This is like it has multiple subplots, and they don't ever intersect. So if you're going to do multiple subplots, have them intersect. Have what happens with the street racing somehow affect the electrician storyline in some way. Otherwise, if they don't intersect at any point, then get rid of one and just focus all your attention on the other. Subplots are supposed to intersect with the main plot at some point. This one doesn't. At any point in this time, does the electric storyline intersect with the street racing. There's nothing that ties the two together. So I would have gotten rid of one, focus all my attention on the other. This just feels like a mishmash of plot points thrown together. It was weaker than the first episode by a lot, but it was still enjoyable. I just hope that things get better from here on out. I hope they stop shoehorning different storylines into one episode. Just focus on one and give me more detail on that instead of kind of... It's almost like you speed run through one story point so that you can introduce another story point, and you kind of speed run through that. I didn't care for it. But yeah, okay, so other than that, it was fine. What would I rank this? This one would be... I'd give this one a 5. This was just an average episode. Didn't hate it. Didn't love it. It was okay. Okay would be like a 6. This is just... So yeah, this would be like a 5 or 6 out of 10. This was just, it was all right. It wasn't anything to write home about. Here's hoping that the next episode is better. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys are enjoying these Trese reviews. If you guys want me to review like something else, let me know. And maybe I'll think about it depending on how many episodes there are. But I have thought about doing more like reviews for TV shows and movies. I'm thinking about maybe doing some anime reviews, like maybe Blood the Last Vampire. That'd be a fun one to do. Or Project Echo or Angel Cop or something, Maybe do some of Dirty Pair, my favorite anime of all time. Bubblegum Crisis, the original OVAs. I don't know. You guys let me know if there's anything you guys are interested in seeing me do a review for. TV show. It doesn't have to be an anime. Could be live action. Could be a Western animation. Doesn't matter to me. Movies, comics, manga. Just let me know. Anyways, I hope to see you guys next time. Take care, everybody. Later. So what'd you guys think of that video? I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys haven't already, please subscribe. Hit that bell for a notification. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video. And if you didn't enjoy the video, thank you for watching it this far. And I hope the next video is more to your liking. Feel free to check out the playlist that you guys see. And I hope to see you guys next time. Later.